everybody. How's everybody doing today? The weather around here cleared up. It is now actually pretty gorgeous out. A little chilly, but we got sunshine, it's dry, and it's not very windy, so I'm pretty pleased. I want to talk to everybody about music. Music, a topic obviously near and dear to my heart. Specifically, I don't consider myself a music expert by any stretch of the imagination, but specifically, a phenomenon I noticed in the perfect album, what I would say is the perfect album. Not necessarily that the music is the best of the genre, not even necessarily that it's one of my favorites, just that the album itself was created in such a way that it lacks flaws. It comes together really, really well. You know, there's a certain art to making an album. And by that, I basically just mean a collection of songs with a teeny piece of artwork together, or perhaps some kind of a theme. But there's 5 in particular that have hit me as being just about perfect. And the trick to making a really good album is, A, all the songs have to be really good. They don't have to be great, but they do have to be really good. There should be no weak link. B, you have to have some kind of thematic element. I mean, it all needs to be at least a similar genre. But then C, they need to be different enough as to not run together and get boring. And there's a few albums I found that did this really, really well. First one I'll mention is Iron Maiden's Power Slave. I believe it was 1986 or thereabouts. Just great selection of metal from the iconic metal band. Between title song like Power Slave or Back in the Village, 2 Minutes to Midnight, a handful of other really good songs on that album. Power Slave is, without a doubt, does not have my favorite Iron Maiden tracks. Some of the tracks on that album I love, but does not have all of my favorite Iron Maiden tracks on it. It just doesn't have any weak links. Like, there's a few other, like Number of the Beast has a couple of tracks that I think are better. Invaders is probably my favorite Iron Maiden track of all time, and that's on Number of the Beast, which also has Number of the Beast and Hallowed Be Thy Name and a handful of other really good songs. But then it has, I think it's Horizon Suns, which is just such a weak link when you're listening to that album. Not only that, the artwork, as with Iron Maiden, is always really good, and the thematic elements of the Power Slave, it's not by any stretch a concept album, but there's a few themes that come back and hit over again that make sense for Power Slave, and the Egyptian artwork and themes to that effect are reflected in a couple of the songs. And next, I would say, blanking on the name, which is completely ridiculous, Spin Doctors, Pocket Full of Kryptonite. Now, obviously, you guys know the 2 iconic songs from that album, Two Princes and Little Miss Can't Be Wrong. You probably also know the song Jimmy Olsen Blues, although that is often called Pocket Full of Kryptonite. The song itself is Jimmy Olsen Blues. The album is Pocket Full of Kryptonite. I think most people know that, but it's a mistake that I've seen made from time to time. The album itself is absolutely terrific. Bluesy rock and roll, not too hard, just good bluesy rock and roll from the start to the end. They took their poppiest, catchiest tunes and threw them on the radio, and they were great. But then you get into songs like Shinbone Alley, Hard to Exist. I mean, that song is 12 minutes long, and you don't even notice. Well, I don't notice. It just is absolutely brilliant from start to end. It takes you on this great journey. It's like the Allman Brothers' Jessica. It takes you on this great journey and then brings you right back to the start and hits you over the head. So strongly recommend, if you like those 2 songs and you like bluesy rock and roll, like Guns N' Roses style, you want something similar but not any heavier than Guns N' Roses, highly recommend this album. Next, if you're into punk rock, particularly newer punk, I am not a huge punk rocker. I like to listen to it, but it's not my thing. Next is going to be Rancid's And Out Come the Wolves. It's amazing that they can take such simplistic music with so much heart and great lyrical writing and put together that many songs. Every song on that album is a winner. There's no dead air on that album. And then it also happens to have the track that is my favorite bass solo of all time. That's Maxwell Murder. But then, in addition to that, Olympia, Washington, fantastic song. And you've heard the song on the radio, Time Bomb. So a little bit of popularity in there, but then every other song on the album backs it. Oh, and Ruby Soho, you've probably heard that one also. But every other song on the album backs those two up. Next, a little oddball here, out of a newer group, Baby Metal, who you may not know about. They were these three lead singers were the, I don't know, can you have three lead singers? I don't know I don't know precisely how to describe them, but these three singers were a part of a J-pop group who apparently, and this is how the story I heard goes, apparently were told, okay, you're too old to do this now, shove off. So they got a heavy metal band to back them, and now they make heavy metal music with their really cutesy poo. There's what's that word? I know you can't tell me right now, but there's that word for a Japanese word that basically means cute, and it's how you describe things like Sanrio or Pikachu. Anyway, the mashup between the two is really unusual, and it takes a little bit of getting used to. But getting into this album, it takes the motives that they threw out there in the couple of songs that they made, like Gimme Chocolate or Mitsugume. It takes those motifs and those themes and explores them in every different directions. Because you've got songs like Mitsugume, which are dark and creepy, like from The Ring. And then you've got Doki Doki Morning, which bounces back and forth between something that sounds like System of a Down and something that sounds like their normal Mitsugume. That one song is kind of a bookend for the entire album, and then the album spans everywhere in between. So every song sounds thematically similar, but you've got a wide range of interesting music. No one song sounds like another. They don't run together. They all have a unique sound, but they'll fit together really, really well. And then another one of my favorites is, and I'm realizing now that I'm thinking of more as I talk about this, Jethro Tull's Thick as a Brick, the original. I don't know how to describe that album to you if you've never heard of it before. It's basically, it's one song that goes 45 minutes long, but it's this story. The story I heard behind the album was Ian Anderson read some critiques of this previous album, Aqualung. And the critiques said, that's a very interesting concept album. And he kind of went, wait a minute, Aqualung's not a concept album. You want a concept album? I'll give you a concept album. So he wrote this song. It's 45 minutes long. You've probably heard versions of it that are much shorter. They made an 8-minute version or so thereabouts that fits on the radio. It might even been a shorter one than that. But that just chops these pieces up. And really, you can break the song up into movements that are between 3 to 12 minutes long. And it fits nicely on an album. But the story itself, the music, it's just like Shinbone Alley, Hard to Exist. It takes you on this journey and it brings you back, and there's a story behind it, the actual, about Lord who has to deal with his family. It's almost War of the Roses type stuff. And then there was one other album that I wanted to mention to you, but no, of course I can't remember what it was. It says, let's see, Power Slave, Outcome of Wolves, Baby Metal, and no, I hit those. No, there was a fifth one. There was a fifth one, and then I mentioned. Well, I can't remember. What are your favorite albums? I'm gonna kick myself because I know as soon as I stop recording, I'm gonna remember what that fifth album was. Well, shoot. In any event, tell me, what are your favorite albums? Do you agree? Is the album a dead art form? Now that, and I'm sure people said this when it went from CDs to cassette, or excuse me, vinyl to cassette and then to CDs. Everyone's probably said, nobody's doing the album anymore. But we're still putting you know, about 30 to 60 minutes worth of music in one collection. There's a thematic element. It's released at the same time. It gives you a snippet of what the band was like at that time. It gives the band a group of songs to take with them on the road when they go out and play. They can play some of their old favorites and a couple of highlights off their new album. And of course the word album doesn't make any sense in that context anymore, but you know, we'll continue to use it because it's an evolving language. So what are your favorite albums? And do you buy in albums, or do you only buy, you know, single tracks? And if you do only buy single tracks, how do you learn about B-sides? I mean, my favorite Bruce Springsteen song, You Can Look But You Can't Touch. I don't believe that was a single. I don't think there's any way you could have bought that without buying the entire album, The River, when that was released. But in any event, something's going on with my attention. Have a nice day.